One thing I did want to point out is to keep all your items clean and organized. It makes if you need to buy any bolts, you can see what you got coming up. If you see you got cross-threaded bolts or anything that you're reusing, just keep everything clean and get ready to go. So when you put it actually together, everything goes together really smooth and quick. It's just a good recommendation.
Okay, just for clarification, this crank has just been torqued down. The video did not take, so just to show you what's going on, I did use plastic gauge all the way down the crank. This crank, and all the way down, you put the plastic gauge on each one of your caps. And this says a 2-bolt main, and that's how you tell 2 bolts. There's not 4 bolts here. Anyway, I ended up using the inch mark. I don't know if you can see that from the video, but the biggest one is .001. You got 002 and 003 for the smallest. Mine all the way down was 003, except for the very center, which was 002, which is still a really great shape and not out of spec. So this thing has been checked for oil guide clearance, and we are running good so far. Already got it from the machine shop. Used gasoline and I cleaned all these surfaces. Already cleaned under here, and I did use some assembly lube, Lucas, and I already torqued down the crank in 3 stages. Did it to 15 pounds, and then 40, and then 70, which is what the manual shows. Also wanted to point out, when you're installing a crank, these are numbered 1, 2, 3, and I've touched them with a Sharpie so you can see them a lot easier. Each one will point arrows forward so you know where the front of the block is, so you don't get them turned around. I wanted to point out that I cranked down the crank itself. Everything is torqued down to spec, and I did use a good helping of PrimeLock T45 blue thread locker on each one of these bolts, so that way they don't back out, rattle loose, do whatever. They also lubricate the threads, so when they go down in there, it's not quite such a bind on the threads itself, because it's the coarse metal from machining and the wash, and same things with the bolts, make a lot of friction. You can barely even put them in by hand. Okay, installing the cam into a 350 is pretty straightforward. I've already had the bearings pressed into this block, and this is actually the bearing here. Had a machine shop do it for me, so I didn't have to do anything. It's actually not like a bearing like you would think, it's just more like a little racer. You take your cam and put your gear on top of it, just put it on one bolt, use it as a handle, and definitely lube the whole thing, especially get where it's going to be resting at. But lube the whole thing so that way you're not doing a dry start when you first start your motor. I'm going to put the camera down. Just put it in really nice and easy. Don't force it. You can scar anything in there, especially the bracers, or what I call the bracers, the bearing actually. That's installing a cam. Okay, I'm about to pull off the small timing chain gear. Okay, so this pulley worked out really well for me. I think so you pulled it straight off. I just put a little socket on here, and this is just a 3 little prong pulley, and I just cranked the sucker down a little bit and it pulled this sucker right off. That's all there is to it. Okay, to install a timing gear and chain, make sure your cam is already installed. Rotate your circle straight down. Take your new gear, find your circle mark, and also find your indicator, which is your peg that sticks out so it goes in the hole and lines up correctly. Take your chain, put it on. You're not going to get this perfect the first time. You got to get this mark to line up, so you need to rotate a tooth. You can spin that gear until it rotates over. Best way to do it Just give it a little bit of slack and slide the chain around like that, a tooth at a time. You put in a bolt to keep everything lined out for a moment. And you can torque it and twist it. I'm one tooth off at the moment, so I gotta go again. Lining back up, and that's dead on the money. And that's all there is to it. Torque it down to factory spec. Okay, this is the top of the block. I've already been all through here very well. I just used gas on little red rags, little shop rags, until they got pretty much really dirty. I'm really surprised on how much gunk is left over from machining. So I pretty much ran through those. You end up going through 2 rags until I end up going with these little blue shop rags, and then I went through them like about 4 times until they finally came out clean. The gas does leave just a little slight film on it. It evaporates pretty cleanly, so I just wiped down the whole block with the blue shop rags, and good to go at the moment. Okay, just showing you more of installing the bearings and pistons. One thing I wanted to mention, take a little blue shop rag, a little bit of gas on it. I'm cleaning these out because these are not brand new. These were turned at the machine shop. And just to let you know, if you don't clean this stuff out from the machine shop, this is the kind of stuff that'll run around in your oil when you first start up your engine and get things going for the first 500 miles. Okay, I'm about to put the bearings on the rings, on the rocker arms. So, this is all the bearings that come with V8. Look like this. Each one has a little notch. If you'll notice the notch right there. This is the other side of the rocker arm that holds up your pistons. If you'll notice, there is a notch. It's pretty straightforward. Line it up. Best thing I've found so far. Get it about as even as you can and rock it down. That's pretty much it. If it's a little bit off, I just take a little rubber mallet and I'm going to massage it into shape. I just tap it so that it rotates up. Once this is done, it rotates up and as smooth as possible. I will put some assembly lube in here so that way it doesn't dry start. And the other part, same exact thing. There is a notch. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Let me spin this. See the notch? Same exact thing. Put the what they call a bearing, which is really just what I would call a racer, in there, and it just snaps into place. And then you definitely want to put some kind of assembly lube on the bearing itself. Okay, I'm gapping the rings now. As you can see, I'll put them in the tops here. You take your ring and find out how much clearance you have. You put it all the way in and put it level all the way around. And the dealership shows it should be .030 for the gap on the ring. You insert it in the groove, as you can see here. And mine's exactly what that is right now. If they don't fit, if it's too much play, or not enough, you need to mill it. As you can see, this one right here, this is one of my big scraper rings. This does not have 030, and I'm going to have to use a mill file, which looks like this. And I'm going to have to mill that ring down. And I have to do that for each one of these. Okay, I'm going to mill file the rings. I need to get another .02 out of this ring, and I'll show you how to do that. Set your mill file on your vise, and pretty much just go up and down. Okay, after you mill file, you should be able to put your gap in there. You should be able to check your ring clearance now. You gotta be real careful though not to make too big of a gap now that's your ring, or else you have to replace your rings. You get blow by after that. That's all there is to it. Setting up the rings. Okay, I'm going to try to show installing the rings. I got 3 pistons left to put on. I want to see if the video will take on that. Set you up right here. First thing to do, take a decently clean rag, wipe out the ring grooves. You'd be surprised how much dust and particles get inside here. You don't want to start out the engine dirty right off the bat. Okay, once those are wiped out, we're going to do the oil ring. This one's pretty simple, straightforward. And you got your either side. It's easiest to go around. I got to turn this up for me. It's easiest to go around the top. I'm sorry, the bottom ring first. Set it inside the groove. I don't know if you can see that, just like that. Set it inside the groove. Push it in and just come all the way around with it. Try to pull it out a little bit. Don't scar the piston if you can, and let it sit inside the groove. You can spin it around. Make sure you get these two to line up correctly so it all cinches up right. You do the top one the exact same way. Push it in. Push it in. Flex the ring all the way around. And pull it off the piston so I don't scratch at the surface. And that's it. That one's on. Your next one, you have one that's got a dot. If you have one like that, I don't know if you can see that on the video. Don't use that one yet. Use the next one up. I've already milled these down. It's ready to go. Do this one second. The one on the top is always a dot. These will have, mine have a little bit of taper to them inside. That shows it goes up. Same thing, these are just a little bit thicker, a little bit harder, but same process. It's a little difficult because I'm turning it, trying to get so the camera can see it too. You'll feel it go into a little bit. Flex the ring some. It's going to have brand new rings. We'll have a lot of give to them. You can break them though, so be careful. And do the same thing for the top. Make sure it's got the dot. And that's it. And upside down, whatever. All the rings are there. When you use your ring compressor, it'll clamp all this stuff, and you still got to spin them so you don't get blow by. I'll go over that in a minute. Okay, I'm inserting the pistons. I rotated the engine straight up so it makes things a lot easier. Rotated the crank on this one straight up so it comes down straight. On my pistons themselves, on the rods, I've used little tubing so I don't scar it. And this is actually the bearing, which you need to use a Lucas on, assembly lube. I've already lubed the whole inside of the cylinder so it slides in nice and easy. And I have my ring compressor on. I'm going to try to get this sucker in here. See how it takes. On pistons, so the dot, that shows you that it goes forward on the block. I'm using a plastic hammer. And that's it.
Once you install your pistons, you need to pull off the rod caps here. Use plastic gauge, torque them down to your crank, and then check them again with your plastic gauge. This is just a photo of what the plastic gauge looks like before you get ready to put it on and crank it down. Make sure you do this to make sure all your gaps are correct. Also remember, if you're reusing some of your bolts, clean them off with gas, get any of the foreign contaminants off of the bolts. And for my rocker arms, I also use blue Loctite on them just to make sure that they don't back out or get loose.